it was exciting for like a day, and then the NBA season it is just brutally ground to a halt at this point.
Yeah, it's crazy. I was looking back a year ago, we would have been doing our fifth live show
Mhm.
tonight, and we had been holding them off to like do them like 10, 11 o'clock Eastern because there had been so much throughout the day and we didn't want to miss stuff. So we were trying to hold off. We could have done a show each of the last 2 days at 9 o'clock Eastern, and we would have been like, all right. So we missed a minimum signing to a
Yeah.
contender. Like, yeah,
Serge
I
Ibaka
was
signed,
right. Yeah, exactly. I have never seen an off season like this. I was talking with friends, and even the ones where everybody's waiting on LeBron, everybody was waiting on the Kawhi trade or
Yep.
Kawhi to sign, and those kind of things. They didn't slow down like this. Like this is just like we hit everything early, and now it's just that's it. Like yeah, everybody's still out there. We're gonna cover all those guys, but they're just kind of waiting now to see what happens with the KD and Kyrie situations.
I mean, everybody was waiting on Kawhi at one point, but it was for like a day, and then some teams finally just said, "Okay, forget it," and just started signing
Mhm.
guys. Obviously from Lakers side, everything was completely shut down while we were waiting on Kawhi, but not like this where it was like free agency got going, and then the effect of the KD trade request, which came out just hours before free agency started, it's like it was a delayed effect where teams were like, well,
Mhm.
it's so late in the game. We already have our guys. We agreed with them 4 weeks ago because tampering doesn't happen. And so we're going to do this. And then it was I think it was all the moves that weren't essentially already done. I mean, Shams had what, like 7 or 8 tweets that were like went off right at the
Yeah.
buzzer. It was all the moves that weren't already done. The teams just went, nope, putting a stop to that. Let's wait and see how this whole Kevin Durant situation plays out, Kyrie situation plays out, and then we can figure out where we're going to go from there. And then from the other side, I think players are doing the same thing where
Mhm.
players are like, you know what? Let's see, because who knows? Somebody could trade away half the roster to get Kevin Durant, and suddenly they've got 5 spots to fill, and I could go get starter minutes over here if I join up with this team. So I think everybody on both sides, both the teams and the players, the free agents, are just kind of waiting to see what happens. And that's kind of just put a stop to everything going on in the NBA world while all eyes are on the Brooklyn Nets and waiting for them to decide what they're doing.
Yeah, you're spot on with that. I was texting with some players and agents yesterday, as well as teams throughout the last few days. And one of the things that an agent told me was, yeah, if this ends up being one of those trades for Kevin Durant, where it ends up a 3 or 4 for 1 kind of trade, wherever he goes is probably going to be a really good team, and they may have roster spots plus rotation minutes available. So we're holding off, and we
Yeah.
may sign there instead of going somewhere else. There's people who are even looking at the Nets and saying like, all right, maybe the Nets are, saying, all right, hey, we still want to compete, so there may be a spot to go in there and go in that direction. San Antonio and Indiana are still sitting on a bunch of cap space. So it is very, very, just stuck right now. The weird thing is, too, we're getting little dribbles of reporting on occasion, right? Chris Haynes had something a couple days ago, which is
Yep.
even crazy for this time of year. So normally it's like every couple hours at least we're
Yeah.
getting
Right.
new stuff. And it's funny. I went to bed the last 2 nights, and normally I'm like every 5 minutes checking my. It feels like every
Yep.
5 minutes.
Waking up at like 4 in the morning and kind of
Yep.
groggily checking
Yeah.
just to see,
And
and
nothing.
not even setting
Yep.
alarm just because you're
Yep.
so keyed up about everything. That's me anyway. Anyway,
Yeah. And like
and
I'm
no,
looking and
not
then
this
there's
year.
nothing. Yeah. Yeah, it was like it was funny because I said to a friend, he was like, "Are you watching these summer league games?" And I was like, "Yeah." And the weird thing is, I'm actually watching them because there's not there's not news distracting from the summer league games every 5 minutes right now, right? So it was funny when I texted you this morning and said, "Hey, we should do a show today just to kind of catch up and get reset things." Part of my hope was we'd get interrupted midway through it, or we'd complete the show, and then all of a sudden we'd be told like, "Oh, here's a tweet with a trade," and we'd have to jump back on later. So that's the funny part of it. It just yeah, it really is a weird time right now where we're not seeing a lot of action. There's just not a lot going on. So yeah, I do think they've kind of get everything held prisoner right now.
Well, here's the thing, Keith. I don't blame the Nets. Like, it's
No.
easy right now to get frustrated and be like, oh, the Nets, and I even put as my title, Nets shut down offseason. That's misleading, I know, because it comes across as like we're blaming the Nets because they've
Mhm.
ruined our fun, right? Like this was so much fun and teams are doing all this stuff and trades are, and then the Nets had to come in and be the party poopers because they won't just make up their mind on Kevin Durant. Think about logistically from the Nets perspective, how many teams do you think, if not submitted formal, full, like serious offers for Kevin Durant, how many teams at least called to check in on what it would take to get Kevin Durant, right? Just about every
Sure.
team in the league, I would imagine.
Yeah.
So just
I
in
would
terms
hope.
of you're in your war room, you're putting these trades, these potential proposals up on the board, you're strategizing what is it that we want most, and teams are making these calls, and you have to at least have a conversation about all of them, even if it's very clearly like, no, this isn't good. Okay, the Sacramento Kings call, they want Kevin Durant. Is there a real deal there? No. Okay,
Yeah.
move on, right? But you still have to be able to have those conversations, and that takes time. When we look at the activity that happened at the beginning of free agency, remember, a lot of that stuff happened over the preceding weeks, right? So it felt like there was a lot. In reality, it was just the big reveal, right? In the
Mhm.
first day, 24 hours of free agency. So it felt like, oh my gosh, the NBA is moving at this breakneck pace. It's going to continue this way. No, that was mostly the previous few weeks just kind of getting unleashed. And now the Kevin Durant thing, this is more standard. It takes time for a trade to come together, particularly one of this magnitude. So I don't even fault Brooklyn because logistically, this isn't easy to do. And frankly, this is the most important decision that they've had to make in a while. The decision they make here is going to impact this franchise for the next decade. So they've got to do everything they can to do their due diligence and do their best to get it right.
And put on top of it, they're trying to sort through Kyrie Irving trades as
Yep.
well. So those aren't easy to put together either. So you're in a position here where you're trading two guys who make a lot of money. So those are complicated trades, even in the summertime. You may be in a position where it's all right, who has cap space left and trying to rope one of those teams into, hey, can you do a reteamer and eat this salary for us? Oh, you need, instead of then the value gets routed to us, it's getting routed to you. We don't really like that. And that's just where it gets really, really messy because all of a sudden it starts turning into, all right, let's just say Kevin Durant in the Suns, in the Nets are like, all right, Suns, we that's where we want to go. That just becomes hard because it's all right, well, there's if it's DeAndre Ayton, there's base year compensation. You also have this Ben Simmons factor, which is because Ben Simmons is a designated rookie extension player. There's like 16 other players that can't be acquired because they're also on the same kind of contract. So that makes that very messy. So yeah, we're in just a weird, there's a lot of weird stuff going on here. Also, too, the Nets don't necessarily really want to bottom out completely and just go youth movement because they don't own their first round picks for the next several years. So at some point that turns into sunk costs, right? Just like it did after the Boston trade,
Sure.
but you just gotta you roll with it and just figure it out. So yeah, this is not an easy one. So we'll see, where this goes with this. So I want to flip it from KD because there's really nothing even being reported there.
Well,
Now I want to
there's
ask you
one
about.
thing before
Oh,
we get
okay.
to KD, get to Kyrie.
No,
We
go
need
ahead.
to talk real quick about KD. We just saw in the NBA draft the Vegas odds shift dramatically late to Paulo Banchero being the number one pick,
Yes.
right? Even as a lot of the top newsbreakers were saying, no, 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 it's Jabari Smith. It's still Jabari Smith at the top of the board. The Vegas odds reflected what was really going on. Obviously, somebody knew something. The Vegas odds suddenly have the Raptors surging to be one of the teams that is now more. I don't think they're the most likely right now, but one of the
No,
teams
I
that is
think
now
Phoenix
more
still
likely
is.
to land him. What do you attribute to that to? Like, is this? Do you think something is going on behind the scenes where the Raptors are going to wind up being the team to come in and grab him, just like Paolo Banchero winds up suddenly shooting up in terms of the odds of going number one, and then lo and behold, he's the first overall pick.
Yeah, I think there's probably a couple things with this one. I think some of it probably is the idea around Toronto can go get him, right? They have the ability to put together a really nice trade package while also still having very good players left behind after to put with Durant to put a really good team on the floor. There's also the Masai Ujiri factor. I say this all the time, more than any GM in the league, he'll step up and take a home run cut and see if he can make it happen. He's not afraid. He's going to do that. He's got the gravitas to do it. He's built a championship level team there in Toronto. I mean, remember, everybody was like, why are they trading for Kawhi Leonard? He's not going to stay there. And everybody was right. He didn't stay there, but they won a title. So it didn't really matter in the end. So yeah, he'll do it. If he feels like the right deal is there, he'll absolutely do it. Even if it is, all right, this one's a little different, right? Because Durant has 3 more seasons under contract after this year. But that is, that just changes it just slightly. But yeah, it is. I'm not surprised the Raptors are up there. I've been throwing them out there for a while, saying like, wouldn't be surprised here if they make a run. You can also deliver some players to the Nets that would make them probably feel pretty good about, all right, we can still put a competitive team on the floor next season.
Matters.